Hello and welcome to this special show on the Iran conflict. I'm Ashmit Kumar. Now, the escalating tensions between the US and Israel on one side and Iran on the other have pushed crude oil prices higher as investors fear major supply disruptions at the Strait of Hormuz. Prices post the biggest rally in 4 years. Natural gas prices also surged as insurance hiked premiums, cancelled policies, and shipping companies rerouted vessels from the Strait of Hormuz. Nearly 20% of the global oil flows through the strait. A Saudi Aramco refinery has also been shot after drone strikes, adding to the supply concerns. Moody's Analytics has warned that the conflict poses significant risks for import-dependent Asian economies like India. India, for example, imports over 80% of its crude oil needs. Now, close to 50% of India's crude oil imports pass through the Strait of Hormuz. Any disruption there could raise the import bill for us, adding to inflation and widening the current account deficit, putting pressure on the Indian rupee. So far, Iran has said that it doesn't plan to close the Strait of Hormuz. However, analyst Vandana Hari has told CNBC-TV18 that if the conflict spreads and is prolonged, crude oil prices could hit the $100 mark. For India, the impact is not limited to energy. It is also affecting the Indian diaspora. An estimated 9.6 million Indians live and work in West Asia, making it one of the largest overseas Indian concentrations globally. The UAE alone accounts for nearly 4 million Indians. Saudi Arabia houses over 2.6 million. Around 10,000 Indians are estimated to be living in Iran. Around 3,000 Indian students, including nearly 2,000 from Jammu and Kashmir, remain in Iran. Of these, roughly 1,100 to 1,200 are in intense conflict areas, pleading for evacuation and support from the Indian government, with multiple countries shutting airspace amidst missile and drone attacks across the parts of the Gulf. Thousands of Indian travelers have also been that were transiting through major hubs like Dubai, Doha and Abu Dhabi have faced cancellations and diversions as well. They too are seeking support. Now, this is clearly an evolving story. Joining us now to help us break this down, to help us understand, are with us senior journalist Waiel Awwad and former diplomat Ambassador Anil Trigunayat. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us. Ambassador, let me come to you first. I'll just recall June of 2025, we saw Operation Midnight Hammer by the United States. They deployed their B-2 bombers, let go, deployed of heavy munitions against nuclear facilities in Iran, and that subsequently led to a corresponding attack on a US base in Qatar. It looked to be orchestrated. Did that skew expectations in the minds of military planners in the US that this will be a small, brief 12-hour operation where we'll decapitate the head of this regime and that'll be the end of it? Because clearly that's not how it's playing out. In just the last couple of hours, we're getting reports of hits in Cyprus, off the coast of Oman, of Jerusalem, Saudi Aramco refinery. It's not quite playing out as per their textbook. Ambassador.
Well, of course, what happened this time is also the playbook exactly that of June. There were negotiations were going on, and immediately suddenly out of the blue, they started escalating it. There was bombing done, but they tried to provide Iran the off-ramp, basically, after the 12-day war. But this time, as you rightly said, that there was a possibility in their design, but the main design was regime change agenda. And regime change agenda could only be fulfilled if either the supreme leader was deposed or killed. So they're working according to their own admission for quite some time. But then they have not properly analyzed that there is a system that has been working. And during this period, Khamenei had himself delegated the authorities to many of the people, and how the chain of commander departments, whether it's an IRGC or in the military or elsewhere. So he had worked out a very proper system, which has clearly worked even after 40-odd leaders have been killed. So I think that they probably will have to live with a little more retaliation from Iran. And the people of Iran will eventually find a way how to go about it. And this forcible removal of or killing of the supreme leader will not go down well in the region as well, as we are seeing that everywhere Iran is currently hitting every single organization or the base that the Americans have. So I think that this is a very major problem.
Dr. Awwad, let me take that cue from Ambassador and bring that to you, Dr. Awwad. The situation that we find ourselves in, a statement from Abbas Araghchi, the Iranian foreign minister, he clearly says that our military units are now, in fact, independent and somehow isolated. They are acting based on general instructions given to them in advance. What I want to ask is that this is clearly a decentralized textbook that the Iranian leadership is now currently working with. Does this, as opposed to Iran being put in a corner, put the US, put Donald Trump in a corner where he has to now grapple with the possibility of a weeks-long conflict stretching across the Middle East, stretching across multiple countries?
Well, I think he is preparing for that kind of scenario because the amount of American weapon and warships and nuclear warships have been sailed into the region and circling Iran from the sea, from the sky, from even Europe.
We have some difficulty there connecting with Dr. Awwad. We'll get back to him. But Ambassador, while we have you, just the next question I want to ask is that India has multiple points of concern as far as this entire conflict is concerned. One of the chief among them being the nearly 10 million strong diaspora that we have in the Gulf region. As this conflict stretches across countries and weeks, is there a possibility of even the likes of UAE, Saudi being drawn into this conflict? And if that happens, what does that do to safety and security of a 10 million strong diaspora in these countries?
Well, Ashmit, the thing is, as you are aware and you yourself said, we have about 10 million Indian diaspora in the region whose safety and security is of primary concern, apart from the energy and economic engagement that is very much incumbent upon safety and security and stability of the region. All are going to be impacted very heavily for India. And that is precisely the reason the government is very concerned. And the Foreign Minister, Dr. Jaishankar, has been talking to all his counterparts. Prime Minister Modi has been speaking to the other leaders, world leaders there, especially the regional ones, and hoping that through somehow this war will be de-escalated and we'll have some kind of a possibility. But of course, I have been involved in many of the evacuations, and I know that this is an extremely cumbersome and complex process, especially as most of the airspace has been closed. So if the missiles start falling indiscriminately on the residential areas, there can be a possible danger. So I would suggest that all the Indians, if they are listening to you, must always remain in touch with our embassies, and Indian government will try its best to pass, to take them out of the harm's way. But situation is extremely difficult. The size of the problem is gigantic because 10 million is not easy to evacuate. But we hope that through international interventions and persuasions, the war will be stopped soon.
Right. Dr. Awwad, we lost you there for a minute. Coming back to you, the question that we're discussing is, as these aerial bombardments continue from Iran, is there now a possibility that the likes of UAE, Saudi get drawn into this conflict? And if that happens, what does that do to the safety of Indian diaspora, which is north of nearly 10 million, living out of these countries?
Well, I think it is a very dangerous situation. Remind me of the evacuation of the Indian in Kuwait and then from Iraq, and how much it was a horrendous task to remove 200,000 Indian from those areas. But imagine 10 million, it's not possible for any country. We all knew the consequences of the war spreading into a regional war. And even the United States knows that this is going to be an all-out war because the Iranian have threatened Ashmit. They have already said to the countries hosting American bases, that if an American attack takes place in Iran, there will be legitimate attack on those targets. However, the fight now, or the attack by the Iranian, is limited to the military side of the American and their personnels, nothing to do with the civilian attacking. And you could see from the attack on Kuwait and Abu Dhabi, Doha, all the attacks have been only in the military bases. Now, if this war is going to spread, yes, there's going to be a contingency plan, and it will be horrendous for any country to evacuate their people, leave aside the Indian part. I think India is the main stakeholder in the West Asian affairs in terms of the food security, oil security, and also the diaspora security. Now you are having the Strait of Hormuz is going to close. You have to fasten your belt for $100 a barrel. You have to fasten your belt for 6. $1,000 and for the gold, 200 for the silver. So these are all the issues where the American anticipated, precipitated, and aggravated the situation to such a large extent that we all know that this was unnecessary, illegitimate war to go with Israel against Iran. The area was very stable despite the skirmish, despite the interfighting, but this kind of an all-out...
Have you on Apache line, Dr. Awwad? We have you on Apache line. Let me just go across to Ambassador Trigunayat for a final comment. Dr. Awwad there made a very valid point. Oil analysts saying that the prices could easily go up of Brent crude to $100 per barrel. What does that do to the economics of oil and, more importantly, to the geopolitics of oil? Do we find ourselves going back to Russia? Can we do that? Can we afford that with Donald Trump watching?
Actually, unfortunately, there's a Donald Trump who pushed us and he wanted us to increase imports from Saudi Arabia. That's what precisely we had started doing it. While India was buying oil from Russia, it was stabilizing the global markets as well. And I think that that is something that will continue to be. Now the Russian oil will also become quite premium for many of the countries if this is what happens here. But at the same time, India will have to. Right now, they have reserves for about 45 days. And I believe that we hope that before that the war will be really, sorted out. I hope so too, because President Trump himself said it will be about 3 to 4 weeks. Although they have destabilized the region, and this will have its own consequences, which will be long-term consequences. And the balance of power shift in the region will also take place.
Dr. Awwad, since we still have you, just a quick question. The strikes that have been launched by Iran against the host of countries, UAE, Saudi being amongst them, does that then perhaps lead to a possibility of a greater understanding, some kind of Arab coalition? We've already seen security setups being arranged between the likes of Saudi and Pakistan. Do we see similar arrangements coming up in the Gulf?
Well, I think, Ashmit, what's happening currently that the GCC have met and had an emergency ministerial meeting and they condemned the attack. They're even threatening Iran of retaliation, retaliatory measures. But I believe there is no question of a coalition or cooperation because we all know that the Gulf countries under the American custody, they are the custodian of their safety and security, American and UK. That's why they immediately took part in this war. Even the French now coming forward, and all these military installations, including the UK military base in Cyprus, have been under attack by the Iranian because they are already taking part against Iran. So I think that is the situation currently now. What we need at this moment is an end of all cessation of all the hostilities, end of this mad war, and let people come back to the negotiating table. You have to see the objective that the United States is declaring. Here, Ashmit, the United States is fighting two wars. Let's put it bluntly. One war is the superpower war where they wanted to control all the corridors of the oil and the global trade in oil, which is coming from Strait of Hormuz, the Red Sea, the Mediterranean, all this area American government wanted to control. That will affect India, China, South Korea, Japan, all the Southeast Asian region, where 60% of the oil come from